Chances are, if you're from the South Florida area, you've heard about the Miami Heat basketball team. Since the team was struggling for about 5 seasons after LeBron James left the city, they finally made a run in the playoffs during the 2020 NBA bubble. Next year, they're going to go all the way. Everybody loves a good underdog story, and the Miami Heat epitomize an underdog as the 11th ranked team making the NBA Finals. Now, I have watched just about every Heat game last season, and it's safe to say that I've noticed a lot of things. The Miami Heat have a great shot to win the 2021 NBA championship because their fantastic young players will only get better. They have room to improve the roster for next season, and they are definitely stronger than the competition. Now, last season, the main problem, especially during the NBA Finals, was that the Heat lacked other options to go to besides Jimmy Butler. The younger players on the team lacked experience, and the team got hit with some injuries. All of this together caused the team to lack the firepower they needed versus LeBron James-led Lakers, and this forced Jimmy Butler to do virtually everything by himself, which is not sustainable in a 7-game series. However, there is a solution. Jimmy Butler will not have to do this next season because the roster will see improvements and the younger players will continue to get better. Now, in order to understand why these young players are going to get better next season, let's take a dive into their stories. So, the first part of the problem with the Heat last season specifically is the inexperience of the youngest players on the roster. While the young players were important to the team, it's hard to rely on multiple rookies and a second-year pro to win the title. However, our youngest players, Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo, and Kendrick Nunn, will improve next season into more reliable options for the team to utilize. Let's share the screen real quick. All right. Now, first, we have Tyler Hero. At 20 years old, 6'5", he was drafted 13th in the 2019 NBA draft. According to Basketball Reference, in 2020, he averaged 13.5 points per game, 4.1 rebounds per game, and 2.2 assists per game. In fact, he after the season was suspended, he dramatically increased his play. In the playoffs, according to Basketball Reference again, he averaged 16 points per game, 5.1 rebounds, and 3.7 assists. In fact, he had actually an incredible game during the Eastern Conference Finals. In Game 4 against the Celtics, he scored 37 points in a victory. According to NBA.com in 2020, this makes him the second youngest player ever to score over 35 points in a playoff game. Now, if the trend continues, Hero will be improving every single year, which means that next season will be the best version of him we've seen yet. Now, Bam Adebayo. Bam Adebayo is 23 years old, 6'9", and the 14th pick of the first round of the 2017 NBA draft. Now, in the regular season, according to Basketball Reference, he averaged 15.9 points per game, 10.5 rebounds, and about 5 assists per game. In fact, he was an all-star last season, and he was also named to the All-NBA second defensive team, which ranks him by the league as the second best center in the NBA. In fact, he's also an amazing playmaker for his position, as you can see from the 5.1 assists per game. According to Bleacher Report in 2020, Jimmy Butler, actually the leading scorer on the Miami Heat, refers to Bam Adebayo as the heart and soul of the team. And experts call Bam the long-term most valuable asset. In fact, pictured on the bottom right of the screen, we have his game-saving block in Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals with 5 seconds left to keep the 1-point lead versus the Celtics. And lastly, we have Kendrick Nunn, a 25-year-old undrafted rookie. In the regular season, he averaged 15.3 points per game, 2.7 rebounds per game, and 3.3 assists per game, according to Basketball Reference in 2020. Out of a 60-player draft, Kendrick Nunn went undrafted, which means they passed up on him for 60 different players. And this is ironic because he actually went on to win first-team All-NBA, which means he was a top 5 rookie in a class that he wasn't even selected in. If I learned anything about him from this, it's that he can never be counted out. And in the playoffs, he actually, just a few weeks before they started, he contracted COVID-19, and he wasn't able to play for all of the playoffs. And when he did play, it was a smaller role, and he did not play as well as he did in the season. However, I blame this on his recovery from COVID-19 because COVID-19 affects your breathing and your lungs, and it's difficult for a player to be effective when he's feeling when those things are damaged, because those are virtually the most important things to an athlete. And now, if I've learned anything from his story, it's that I won't count him out, and I expect him to be at his best next season. Now, another reason why the Heat did not have enough firepower to defeat the Lakers last season was because during the first game of the finals, both Bam Adebayo and Goran Dragic, the new starting point guard, went down with injuries and could not come back until games 5 and 6. These injuries are huge because they are two of the top 3 players on the team. In fact, until then, Dragic was leading the team in points scored during the playoffs. Even though they were eventually able to get back onto the court, they were not even close to their best in these games, and it did not relieve Butler of the huge role he had on the team. As a quick recap, a big issue with the Heat last season was the lack of experience of the young players, forcing Jimmy Butler to have to do too much. This problem will be solved next season because since everybody just played in the finals, they now have experience. Also, by next season, Bam and Dragic's injuries should be fully healed. So, now that I've discussed how the younger players will improve, let's discuss how the team can improve the roster with new players. Although the Heat made the NBA Finals last season, many would still argue that it was a fluke, because it is not often that a team ranked 11 by record like the Heat was last season makes the finals, and that this team is not good enough to do it again. However, even if this was the case, which it is not, the roster will likely have improvements made to it through free agency. This offseason, while there are no superstar players with expired contracts, there are definitely some key players that may sign to the Heat after seeing how well the team did last season, with Danilo Gallinari at the top of the list. Gallinari, a forward who played for the Oklahoma City Thunder last season, could add a lot to the team. At 6'10", he would be a good replacement for Jay Crowder, a player who was disappointing during the finals and has a hard time guarding bigger players than him. In addition, according to Bleacher Report in 2020, DeMar DeRozan is a realistic candidate for next season to sign during the Heat. DeRozan is a 4-time All-Star and could definitely be the one to put Miami Heat over the top for next season. So to reiterate this, a problem that some may have with the Heat's roster is that there aren't enough great players on it to win a championship. But adding one of these players over the offseason would be an amazing way to silence the critics. So now that we've discussed the improvements that can likely be made to the Heat's roster next season, now let's recap the main points. So last season, the Miami Heat had a problem finding players to help Jimmy Butler on offense during the finals, causing him to run out of gas, and the Heat lost because the young players lacked experience and because of their certain injuries of Bam Adebayo and Goran Dragic. However, the solution is that the Heat's young players, Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo, and Kendrick Nunn, will only improve going into next season after getting experience playing on the biggest stage in basketball. And the Heat will have room to sign amazing free agents such as Danilo Gallinari or DeMar DeRozan, who will fit in seamlessly with the team. So while not everybody watching needs to support the Heat or even expect them to win it all next season, all I ask is that you watch them play with an open mind and see the potential in this team that I do. So for all my sports gamblers, you now know who to put your money on next year, the Miami Heat.